in addition to having a kit as long as a novel, which I already made a video about, plug, Cyrene has also created a lot of discussion about her design and aesthetics. And personally, it might affect my decision to actually pull her in the end far more than even her kit. I'm also just going to say right up front here that this is all before her story actually comes out in 3.7, and I hope it makes me completely change my tune by justifying any of the design elements that I don't like. And I think it has a good chance of achieving that too, because Amphorius has been great. So, keeping that in mind throughout everything I have to say, let's get going. First off, like I mentioned at the end of her kit video, the most unforgivable thing about her is that she just has no Memosprite. It is considered out of bounds and doesn't interact with the field at all until she uses her ultimate. And we get to see that it has the one-for-one exact same design as she has. This makes it so that she just functionally has completely no Memosprite. As she ults, and then we see her perform her ult exactly the same as any other character with no Memosprite or summon, just with more production value and longer animations. I should mention though, to avoid accidentally spreading misinformation, that she does mechanically have a Memosprite. It's just that it's really a technicality purely for the sake of fulfilling Casterus and Everknight's requirements. Which seems like a really questionable decision. Surely if you're going to release a Remembrance character with a completely different design than the one you've spent time getting people invested in, you'd take advantage of the fact that they are Remembrance and make their Memosprite one of her other forms to maintain some connection and make everyone happy to some extent. This is a good chunk of the reason I didn't really have many feelings about her splash art, but now that her actual animations are leaked, I don't like the new design. Her splash art shows almost exactly what they should have done. Smolrene and Mem as ghostly Memosprites floating around her. To give a potential defense though, she is leaked to be getting a skin alongside her release. We'll see whether that turns out to be true. Everknight was leaked to have some small kind of skin, for example. But if it is true, a skin could make it actually look like she has a separate Memosprite by not changing its design. A skin that brings back the Smolrene design, for example, only aged up to fit the size of Cyrene's playable model, could make the Memosprite actually feel a little real, from it being able to contrast the Smolrene style on the field with the wedding look of the Memosprite during the ultimate. Still, even if her skin makes it so that she and her Memosprite have different designs so that they can actually be told apart, it still just looks like a normal character with a different design during their ult. There's nothing Remembrance about it. What the fuck is the actual point of Remembrance if they don't even have to put an extra bloody character on the field? And now, the last one we're going to get, for God knows how long, doesn't even summon their Memosprite onto the field temporarily. At least other Remembrance characters that could easily fit into another path gameplay-wise, you could argue that, well, Memosprite actually being on the field and increasing the amount of models the game has to render and have enemies interact with could take a lot of coding and development work, so it makes sense to create a new path as an exciting way to market that, rather than just saying, hey, we've put a load of development time and work into summons that you basically already had, but this time you can actually see them on the battlefield. But what is the excuse this time? Cyrene could literally just be Harmony. I feel like early on the whole path just being a ploy to sell light cones theory could sound a bit ridiculous and over the top, but now it's just clear fact. They could at least try and hide it. But okay, so she effectively just doesn't have a Memosprite. What about what we do see? Well, ignoring the possibility of a skin, Cyrene entirely throws away everything we've gotten accustomed to and all of the design elements that displayed things about her character and tied her to Amphorius. Her small design has bandages and runes that tie her to Nanook. The runes also just lend a general ancient fantasy vibe to her design to fit in with the rest of Amphorius. It uses a lot of dark colour. Sure, there's white, but it's under the purple jacket that actually makes up most of her design and gave her a unique visual identity as, I think, the only predominantly purple character. Instead of any of the weapons she's been associated with so far, like a ceremonial dagger or scythe or even tarot cards, her playable design just suddenly uses a bow, seemingly entirely just because it's what Elysia used. I will give it praise in that it allows her idle animation to be sitting on it like a swing, but it doesn't match any of her previous vibe or have any setup at all as her weapon. She's supposed to be a counterpart to Phainon, a physical combatant wielding a sword that wears a predominantly white outfit that has dark colours worn underneath and spread throughout with a blue cape and lining with lots of details that represent and symbolise the sun. Cyrene's small design, then, is a definitely not physical fighter, instead being more like a priest or caster in my opinion, wearing a predominantly dark outfit with light colours underneath, overall consisting mostly of purple, which is right next to blue on the colour wheel, with some pinks to accompany it, and of course gold detail to tie into what feels like every Amphorius design, with the only real weapon she's been seen holding being a scepter with a scythe that forms the shape of a moon. Her playable design is a white dress that gets veil-like trails after using her ultimate. It does still use purple, primarily on the interior underside of the dress, but it overall focuses more on pink, a very light blue, and a rainbow-like spectrum for most of its details and her long hair. With no bandages, no runes, no special emphasis or use of the colour purple, not even any gold. I could be fine with it. Most of Amphorius has been quite fantastical rather than ancient Greek, and Cyrene's design is so over the top that it's hard to imagine it releasing during any other planet, except maybe Penacony as a character who's a performer like Robin. But it just doesn't actually tie itself in at all to anything we've had. I could see her as a Penaconian performer. If the focus was even just a little less on wife, then I could like it. If it took itself even further and went more over the top, or had any kind of staff instead of a bow, or any kind of transformation, I could enjoy it as just a random magical girl-like design. If the top priority wasn't wedding dress and it kept a lot of purple from the original design, I could like it. Heck, if she literally looked more like Elysia, I think it would fit better and I could enjoy it more. In response to some of the criticism of her design, I've seen people say, what did you expect? Cyrene references Elysia and does her poses from the beginning. But 1, referencing a character from a different game is not foreshadowing something in this one. 2, what was I expecting? Bloody nothing, because I don't know Honkai Impact 3rd, and until now have never felt like I had to. Even if I was fully familiar with Elysia though, every XP in the game before has differed pretty massively and was set up in this game rather than binning a more original and connected to the story design, seemingly just so that they can look more like Honkai Impact 3rd. I don't actually have any problems with XBs. It's just how they've executed this one that is a fumble. Even from a business perspective, don't get everyone familiar and attached to a different, simpler, smaller design and then not use it for a character of the path that is supposed to have a simpler, smaller summon next to them. Seriously. Her design and the effects she leaves on field can also just really clash with some of the characters she's supposed to be supporting. Most of all, Phainon. The zone she puts down with her skill is probably the least subtle zone in the game. So when it stays visible even in Phainon's territory, it stands out and clashes so much more than someone like Triby's, for example. Imagine if her design instead had a moon theme, and her zone vaguely shared the aesthetic of Flame Reaver's Moon Scythe. Imagine that during Phainon's ultimate and in his territory. That would look so much better. The wedding theme of it just completely doesn't match Phainon's ultimate, and it isn't subtle about that theme at all. When she uses her ultimate on an ally, she puts a big heart above their icon to show that they have been buffed, and it just looks silly on Phainon too. To me, it at least stands out so much to be funny, but that's still not ideal. Finally, on top of and in combination with everything else, the second reason seeing her design in full has put me off so far are her animations. Or rather, one specific animation in her ultimate where you have to press the button to confirm you want to use it, and she puts a ring on her finger and kisses it. For me, it just jumps the shark. It's just too transparently nothing to do with the story or Amphorius and is just a reference to a real thing. I think I usually have a high tolerance for that. I didn't have any problem in Genshin with Shilonin DJing or Mavwika's motorbike, for example. The opposite, in fact. It's cool as hell. But it's the combination of everything. She doesn't just have an animation putting on a ring and kissing it. For no previously established in-universe or story reason, she's a character in a wedding dress made as much as possible to look like one of their most popular waifus from a different game. So when she then goes on to have an elaborate animation where she stares at the camera until we press a button to put a ring on her finger, how am I supposed to see that as anything other than an absolutely blatant, desperate call for me, the real-life person behind the screen that she's staring at, to get attached to her and spend all my money? It frustrates me so much. Her animation quality is fantastic. She has the most elaborate animations of any character so far, with an insanely high production value. I want to emphasise that it really is the combination. While making this video and thinking about it so much has given me a design in my head I would so much rather have, where she has a purple robe with long witch's sleeves, lots of sparkling moon detail in the same colour as Flame Reaver's scythe, while wielding a moon staff that sure maybe transforms into a bow. Or actually, if that's too witchy and similar to Herta, then instead of bookending Amphorius with witches, it could be cool if Cyrene swerved and was like a techno mage. Like, Herta is a scientist that suddenly has a magical design, so at the end, if Cyrene, who comes across as like a priestess from an ancient Greek fantasy planet, has a technological, science-y design, that could be cool given Amphorius's real origins. But I majorly digress. If any of the issues I described were better, I would like her. Even if she just didn't have that ring animation that makes me embarrassed to be even seen using her ult. It's worse than skimpy outfits and everything even. They're everywhere, and everybody likes hot people, but such parasocial waifu bait. That is embarrassing. As it is though, until seeing what a potential skin looks like, I don't want to pull her, if that makes sense. I don't want her to have a must-have kit or anything. And it's such a shame because she has a good design. And I really like Mem.
Mem. Dead me, Mem.
But until the story hopefully changes my mind, I feel no connection to them in this design. And just to address that, I've also seen people saying that we need to wait to see the 3.7 story first, before judging her, and we're not supposed to have seen her design yet. But it's just not really true. She's already been officially drip marketed, and they will show her in her entirety in the live stream long before we actually have the chance to play the 3.7 story. She's available in the gacha as soon as the patch drops, and people want to roll as soon as possible, so would look into her before finishing it anyway. If she was releasing in the second half of the patch and they delayed the live stream to keep it under wraps, then sure. But otherwise, it is known and expected that she will be judged long before her story releases. Still, in fairness, she isn't supposed to be seen like this before the live stream, which does give more information, which is why I've been constantly mentioning and bringing up her skin, and how if she does have one, or any other surprises, or the live stream goes into and explains any of her story even, that could change things. I really hope the story does pull it off and makes everything work, and I can't wait for the live stream to see what it might hopefully reveal. With the potential of a skin, there has been talk of a spending event or something to go along with it, and while it feels really weird to say at the end of a negative video like this, if you do already plan to spend, then I have an affiliate link for Loot Bar that it would be a huge help to me if you used. I'm not sponsored or anything, they just let anyone make an affiliate link, and I've been using them myself for a while now, and I have bought quite a lot at this point without any issue, and I've noticed they have offers and discounts at the start of every patch too. So while I feel actually really bad bringing it up, if you would be spending anyway, you can get it cheaper. Thank you so much for sitting through this rant. You can check out my other video on Cyrene. Until hopefully next time, bye.